Good morning, dear students. Hope you must have followed the previous link and understood the chapter till we did last. We did till reserves and classification of resources. So let's continue further. Development of resources is your next topic. If you actually see this topic, it's not the development of resources given to you, rather, because of this development, what harm we have done to the nature, that is explained. Like very first one they have told you, depletion of resources for satisfying the greed of few individuals. See, very true. We become greedy when we use the resources. Like for water, if it is available 24 hours to us, we are least bothered that whether we are utilizing it or we are misusing it. We waste more rather than using it more. Then, if we talk about our society, our second point, accumulation of resources between two halves of the society, one who are rich and the other one who are poor. We know well that rich can afford more of resources, so obviously wastage is more. And when we talk of poor, the concentration of resources in their hands becomes too less. And third is when we talk of indiscriminate exploitation of resources. It is not only that depletion of resources has led to crisis in our country, it's globally everywhere we have seen the effects of these depletion of resources. For example, if I talk about global warming, if I talk about ozone layer depletion, if I talk about pollution, land degradation, we have seen that depletion of resources is a worldwide problem now. And we have already read about it that resources are not equally distributed. Globally, you might find one resource in abundance somewhere and other resource you lag behind. So that is the reason that we need to sustain these resources for a longer time. See, your next topic is sustainable development. You must have heard about this topic in your previous classes too. Sustainable development is that you are utilizing the resources in such a manner, in such a way that you are able to use it in your future too, or your coming generations, they also have the availability of these resources. This is the fact that we cannot stop the usage of these resources. We can never say this, okay, we'll not become greedy, we'll stop the usage of these resources. See, fulfilling your essentials is a different concept, and becoming greedy is totally a different way. So instead of becoming greedy, if we limit ourselves for the utilization of these resources, we'll be able to save the resources for our future generations too. This is what actually sustainable development is and the best way out to use your resources. Now, when we move on to our next topic, that is resource planning. See, planning, if we talk about, is utmost required in every sphere of life. It is not only the resources that you need to plan out right from the beginning of your life to have a sustainable future, you need to plan out everything around you. Similarly, we have learned in our previous topics too that resources are limited. Even though they are present in abundance somewhere, we as human beings utilize them to such a larger extent that it becomes difficult for a particular resource to renew or replenish itself. And we have already read that resources take millions of years to replenish themselves. And apart from it, we have learned this also that resources are present in abundance somewhere at a very large extent, and at other places they do lag behind. There are a lot of examples given to you on the next page, if you can see. And they have told you that if we suppose we talk about Rajasthan, where we have abundance of solar or wind energy, but the problem is we don't have the much availability of water there. Same way, if we pick up our another example of Ladakh, the cultural heritage present there is unbelievable and not comparable to anything. But if we talk about the infrastructure development that we require, it is to a minimum range. So there are many examples which you'll find out around yourself that resources are present in abundance at a place, and on the other hand, the other resource might be to a very, very, very few extent. So that is the reason we require resource planning in our country. So, when we talk of this resource planning, there are actually three steps given to us, explained to us, and these three steps are very important not only to understand the concept of resource planning, but also to make it a habit to utilize these resources well. From the examination point of view, also, this topic is very important. You must go through it very carefully. So, very first point that is explained to you is that I identification and inventory of resources across the regions of the country. See, when we talk of inventory, it means the stock. So, very first step in our planning is that we need to know to what extent a resource is present certain at a certain place, and that can be done through different methods. When we talk of surveying, we make a survey that whether the resource is present, what kind of resource is there. We can do mapping, we can have the quality and quantity checked. So these are the few techniques we can adopt to have an identification and stock of resource. Second is what technology we'll be adopting when we come to know that particular resource is present somewhere. What technology we'll be adopting to extract that resource. What skill, what infrastructural setup we have with us so that we can extract a resource from somewhere. For example, if there is a dam somewhere built to a very, very big extent, we need to have the hydroelectric power generation from there. First of all, we need to look inside that do we have such good infrastructure that we can generate hydroelectricity from that dam? So there are many examples that once you know that the availability of resource is there in a certain region. Second step is what technology, what skill will you use to extract that resource, or in other words, to use that resource for yourself or for the country. Now, the third major step is that whether the resource development process that you are following is actually matching your national or your economy needs. Is it compatible with your economy? Is it compatible with your nation that you need to take out the resource, extract the resource, and use it? So that compatibility must be matched out. So these are the actually three steps we need to follow in our resource planning for our country. See, when we talk of resources, I've already told you that resources availability depends upon lot of factors. The terrain, the climatic conditions, the ecological balance that we have, the availability of resource depends that what kind of multiple factors are available nearby that resource. And then only we can think of using a particular technology or skill to extract that resource. So there are many regions in our country, that are rich in resources, but maybe they are economically backward regions. And there are some regions which have a poor resource, but they are economically very developed. So technology and the availability of resource also play a very, very important role in extracting a resource or making the resource planning for the country. I hope till this your topic is clear to you, right? Now, your next topic, if you can see, is in the form of a question. They have asked you, can you name some resource rich but economically backward regions, and some resources poor but economically developed regions. See, this is very true. I've already told you that there are resources at a place which are economically very backward, but yes, the resource is in abundance there. Like we picked up the example of Ladakh. If you talk about the resources, the water availability, the cultural heritage present there, it is in abundance there. But if we talk about the infrastructure development, we literally lag behind in it. Same way, if we talk about Rajasthan, or if we talk about Gujarat, especially Rajasthan, where solar energy, wind energy is available to a very large extent. But economically, have we made ourselves so feasible that we are able to extract, or we are able to completely utilize that potential resource for ourselves? So these are few examples you can frame out here. So when we talk of these resources, if we talk about from our previous history, where we were not aware of much of the technology, we were not aware of the much of the stocks or reserves present in our country, to the development that we have done today, there are number of examples that you will find in nature, nearby you, nearby your environment, that you can quote up for this topic. So, I hope this much is clear to you, and rest will continue in our next class.